Welcome back, Canonites. Late as usual to this game, but I'm here nonetheless. Recently we got the latest Ask 343 video, the series which follows each Inside Infinite article, allowing fans to ask questions of the developers and the developers to interact more directly with the community. And today's Ask 343 is all about that sweet, sweet audio. This video was of course hosted again by the ever charismatic and terrible joke teller John Unishek, and he's joined by Chase Thompson, lead audio technical designer, Joel Yarger, music supervisor, and Kyle Frazier, lead sound designer. Starting things off was a follow-up to the new Acoustic Simulation system, which, as we discussed last time, is basically 343's new system to make everything sound as realistic as possible and allow players to more easily understand where a sound is coming from. The question asks if players would be able to hear gunfire on the other side of a wall that doesn't have any, as 343 puts it, portals, or openings that allow sound through. And the short answer is yes. Essentially, the system won't mute sounds, though they will be muffled to various degrees to make things sound realistic. From there, it was asked if Infinite would have more somber tracks, and again the answer is basically yes. This kind of naturally feeds into a question asked towards the end of the Q&A, where the team is asked when we might expect to hear more soundtrack samples. They explain that since the music complements the story arcs of the game, never mind that score titles can sometimes be spoilery themselves, 343 isn't too keen to reveal too much more of the music right away. As Joel Yarger explains, the music is often in context for the game. So, returning to the initial question, Infinite's soundtrack will have its emotional highs and lows, reflecting the story arcs and beats of the game, and they can't wait for us, the players, to experience that. So, while it's sad that we may not get much more in the way of music samples before the fall, it's understandable that they don't want to prematurely spoil things. Back in the days of Halo 4, the Halo 4 soundtrack was originally going to be released before Halo 4 came out. However, it was pushed back due to potential spoilers from the soundtrack itself, along with the bonus material included with the collector's edition of the soundtrack. So I more than understand 343's position here. And before we move on, it's asked later on if streamers and content creators should expect to be able to use the Infinite soundtrack on stream and in videos, or if we'll be able to mute the music. Joel Yarger prefaces that his answer here is not a promise, but it is the team's intent that creators will be able to use the music in their content, which you can bet I am very happy to hear. 343 has been so damn cool when it comes to the use of Halo soundtracks, and I'm glad to hear that not only is that continuing with Infinite, it's actually a direct consideration. Now, can Volume 1 of the Halo 4 soundtrack get that same treatment? There are so many tracks in there that instantly get flagged whenever they're being played, even if it's in the game itself. Moving on though, the next question following the one about somber soundtracks was about the plasma pistol hum returning, which the team confirms it will, though with some modern sounds. Specifically, they describe that there'll be this high-tech wind-up as you're charging it, which then turns into a hum with the crackle of plasma. I cannot wait to hear that. They next talk a bit about the threat priority system. If you'll recall, 343 detailed this in the last Inside Infinite, noting that the sounds of enemies directly shooting at you will sound the loudest, with other sounds being turned down to a degree so that the most threatening sound is the clearest. The asker in this case is worried about other sounds being too quiet. 343 notes, though, that nothing will be muted. The highest threat will of course be the loudest, followed by sounds of nearby enemy fire in general, and the fire from your nearby allies being the softest. But it'll all be there and present. This is rather interesting since in all previous games, the loudest sounds would simply be those closest to you, which could often mean your allies. I'm really excited about this prioritization system. A later question kind of follows up on this one, asking how object source and size might impact threat priority, if at all. In other words, does bigger mean louder? It seems that the design team did experiment with this sort of idea, where the quote-unquote scariness of a threat, the weapon or vehicle that they were using, impacted the threat prioritization. However, it seems that this didn't actually aid in 343's goal of increasing situational awareness, and the idea was scrapped. The most important factor they found was simply who is about to deal damage, and decided to prioritize that through various factors. The next question asked if Halo Infinite's music will be adaptive, or if the tracks will play out differently based on the gameplay state. This is something that's always been in Halo, which is why tracks can sound different in-game versus off the soundtrack, and in games in general.
The important thing about interactive music is that it feels like it's scoring what you're doing. And what's nice about all these things is every time I hit start or stop or alt or any of that stuff, it corresponds to something that could be happening in the game.
Halo Infinite will continue that tradition. Following that is a question about the hardest sound to design or implement, which Kyle Frazier answers. Regarding design, it's probably the answer most people would expect: the vocalizations of creatures that don't exist in the real world. The Inside Infinite article actually touched on this a bit too. But as Kyle describes it, they have to come up with 15 to 30 behavioral sets that have a range of variations, and they all have to sound coherent, like they're all coming from the same creature, even if certain variations use different sources and mixes. As for implementation, that goes to the vehicles, since everything has to be faked. With games like Forza, they can dedicate time to a simulator for the engine and vehicle noises, whereas something like Halo has to basically design the sound they want for that situation. After that, the next question asks if differences in enemies and allied audio will apply to things like footsteps. Again, the answer is yes. Chase also notes that they have a 3D mode audio system for certain multiplayer modes. For example, the sounds of, say, returning the flag in CTF will come from the flag's position on the map, once again increasing situational awareness. I cannot wait to flight this game and play it. This sounds really damn cool. The next question asks if the music from the 2018 and 2019 trailers will be in the game. The 2018 trailer was basically a tech demo, and like a lot of what was seen in there, the music was created just for that trailer, so that music is unlikely to reappear. That's unfortunate, and I hope that 343 can surprise us with some of that returning during the game, not unlike the Finish the Fight track from the Halo 3 announcement trailer. If you don't recall, at the time that was made, Marty himself seemed unsure if the track would ever return in the game itself, though it ultimately did.
The fanfare is actually a new theme, and I don't know if it's ever going to show up ever again.
On the other hand, the E3 2019 trailer was pulled directly from the game's opening moments, so the music is there. The next question asked what the weirdest recording that was transformed into something else was, which the team notes is kind of hard to answer as that's basically what they do on a daily basis. After that, they're asked to talk a bit about the damage track feature for vehicles that the Sandbox team previously talked about, and how audio is implemented for that. For the most part, it sounds pretty familiar, where you hear the audio for any visual damage like sparks and steam, but they also note that the way a vehicle sounds will change when damage is taken. For example, surface sounds will be different when, say, a tire is blown out. And of course, there is a doom state alarm, something that recent games have implemented to let you know to get the hell out of a vehicle. Up next is a question about music in multiplayer, which 343 briefly touched on during the last Inside Infinite. From the sound of things, it won't be too dissimilar from what 343 has done in Halo 5 and even Halo 4 to a degree, with music at the start and towards the end, but also during moments that might lead to the end, like when you're about to score a game-ending objective. But no constant music, just music emphasizing impactful moments and implemented in a way that, quote, stylistically fits in Halo. This is an aspect I've thoroughly enjoyed in 343's games, and I'm glad to see it return. After that, the team is asked if sound design from the July demo has been refined and adjusted, and in short, these sounds have undergone the same sort of refinement process the rest of the game has, but they're largely intact. Kyle Frazier does note that the Mangler and Ravager got a new pass though. The next question asks if we can expect anything like Firefight voices or the Halo 5 Voices of War announcer pack. At the moment there's no confirmation, but it seems that Chase Thompson was heavily involved with the Voice of War pack, and he notes that he's really passionate about customizing the player experience. So maybe down the line, we can expect something like Voices of War. Infinite is a 10-year game after all, so there's always hope. The next question asks about the process of creating sounds for wildlife, and the answer isn't too dissimilar from Kyle Frazier's breakdown of creating sounds for creatures that don't exist in the real world. The team identifies behaviors for these animals, gathers sources from all over the animal kingdom, from those in nature to people's pets. Interestingly, Kyle says during this that some of the pug noises they recorded were used for, quote, the digger creatures, which I don't think we've heard about before. But back to the question, the team also works with content providers to capture sounds from across the globe, so lots of sounds from all over. The next question asks if Jeff Steitzer will return as the multiplayer announcer for Halo Infinite, which is a solid yes. Not much else to discuss here, I just can't wait to hear that voice again. And the final question asks, what sounds were used to build the Halo Infinite battle rifle? Kyle Frazier fields this question, noting that the Halo 2 BR was the main inspiration for Infinite's take on the gun, which I think is fairly evident when you see its design and hear it fire. The sounds for the gun were taken primarily from the FN SCAR battle rifle and the FN M240B, along with various other guns, plus a special Foley tool that the team has in studio.
And then the actual kind of punch and bass, that was from a recording I think we just did here in the Foley studio. We have this device that will pressurize air into like a 2-liter bottle essentially. And then if you puncture it with a projectile of like a certain velocity, it'll create a sonic boom, very low energy because the bottle rips at supersonic speed.
Back in college, I got to do a little Foley work when I was working on my degree, and it was an absolute blast. Times like these, there's definitely a part of me that kind of would have loved to go into sound engineering. But failed dreams aside, that wraps up the latest Ask 343 video. This Q&A was incredibly insightful from a design perspective, and has again left me with more excitement for Infinite. But how about you all? Did any particular question or statement catch your attention? What was your favorite part of the latest Ask 343? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, you can always leave a question for the team on Twitter with the hashtag Ask343. Maybe your question will appear on the next video. That's all for today though. This has been Halo Canon, and I'll see y'all next time. Special thanks to our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shoutout, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits such as behind-the-scenes materials and shoutouts like this. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. If you really enjoy this, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.